I need like a thing up here. I need it there. I feel like I'm just. Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of December 14th, 2022, and welcome everyone here to the council chambers this evening. The council is still conducting our weekly council meeting in a hybrid mode that allows us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person. And we hope to continue this format as long as possible to be accessible to our community. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you need to go to the City of Everett website and find under the City Council Department the registration form. Click on the form, it will take you to, the link will take you to the form that you'll complete, and once it's submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Note that participants must submit the form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting, and any forms that are submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link or number to speak at that meeting, but may still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person to the council chambers or could possibly speak at a future meeting. And just please note, we do not allow public comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are not related to a city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll tonight?
Mayor Franklin. Here. Vice President Tui.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely. Here. Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. I'd like to ask Councilmember Schwab to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Tui, would you like to read the land acknowledgement?
Sure. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohokshee people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. And we'll move to the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the December 7th meeting?
So moved.
Councilor Ryan seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes, and I need to tell you how to spell the last name, but it doesn't have to be right.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stonecipher. First, I'd like to invite Chief Templeman forward to swear in some new officers to our Everett Police Department.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Franklin. Good evening, Council. I wish we could do this once a month with this number. I think we'd be in much better shape, so we're working on it. So I'm happy to be here tonight to be able to introduce to you our most recent graduates from the Criminal Justice Training Commission, as well as one lateral police officer. And so I'd like to start with Tom Lane. So Tom was born and raised in Seattle and graduated from Bishop Blanchette High School in 2015. Tom then attended Gonzaga University and graduated with a degree in psychology with a focus on pre-med classes with a nursing assistant certification. Tom started a commercial glazer apprenticeship program after college and helped construct buildings all around the Puget Sound region for the last 2 years prior to joining the Everett Police Department. Tom decided to pursue a career in law enforcement so he could help others. He believes the position of police officer provides the best opportunity and the necessary skill set to help others and be a part of a solution. When exploring various departments in our region, Tom chose Everett PD because of the professionalism, good work ethic, and positivity exhibited by every officer he met during the hiring process. Tom graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy with honors on November 30th, and you'll hear about a couple of these officers that were very high achievers in their class. Tom finished both with the highest overall and highest academic performance out of his entire class, all while taking on added responsibilities as the class vice president. And now back at the department, Tom looks forward to getting out on the road and building relationships with both his peers and community members. In his free time, Tom likes to be active and can be found hiking in the North Cascades, swimming in the Sound, and visiting family in Chelan. Thank you. Next, we have Brianna Lashley. So Brianna was born and raised in Dothan, Alabama. She graduated from Northside Methodist Academy and is currently attending Columbia Southern University. Brianna hopes to earn a degree in criminal justice and continue her education with studies in forensic psychology. Brianna is a lateral police officer from the Houston County Sheriff's Office in Alabama. She started her public safety career working in dispatch, then shortly after transferred to the Houston County Jail, where she worked as a corrections officer and a training officer. She then completed the police academy and became a patrol deputy for the Houston County Sheriff's Office, where she served for the past 3 years. Brianna enjoys the opportunities police work provides to engage with the community and make a positive impact on those she interacts with. Brianna was drawn to the natural beauty of Western Washington and began contacting different police agencies. From her first interaction with Everett PD, she was treated with kindness, and the staff were helpful and welcoming. Brianna and her wife, Alicia, are newlyweds, getting married this last October. They moved to Washington State just a few weeks ago and are very eager to learn about the area and spend their free time hiking and traveling around the state. As Brianna looks to the future, she's excited for the opportunities our department can offer and hopes to fulfill her long-term goal of becoming a detective. Thanks, Brianna. Next, we have Hannah Nichols. So Hannah was born and raised in Snohomish and graduated from Archbishop Murphy High School in 2018. She went on to Arizona State University and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Public Service and Public Policy and Criminology this past May. Hannah was a student athlete at ASU, where she played on the lacrosse team. Hannah always knew that she wanted to go into law enforcement as her career path. While attending ASU, she worked in the crime prevention unit at the Mesa Police Department alongside crime prevention officers. Hannah began applying for police officer positions as she neared graduation. She already saw Everett PD as an effective and professional department based on her experience growing up in the area and through her research. She was further impressed by staff as she went through the hiring process, as they made her feel welcome and supported. Hannah graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on November 30th and is eager to begin her field training alongside experienced officers. She's excited to get out into the community and start making a positive impact. In her time off, Hannah stays active in various sports and activities and enjoys showing her 2 whippets at dog shows. Thanks, Hannah. All right, Mason. Next, we have Mason Pistole. Mason was born in Edmonds and raised in Mount Lake Terrace. He graduated from Mount Lake Terrace High School, where he wrestled and played baseball. Mason graduated from Shoreline Community College in 2021 with an associate's degree in general studies. Mason worked as a cadet for the Mount Lake Terrace Police Department prior to being hired by the Everett Police Department. His desire to protect others, particularly those who are most vulnerable, led him to pursue a career in law enforcement. Mason was also inspired by his grandfather, Norman Pistole, a former Snohomish County Sheriff's deputy and Darrington Police Chief, who instilled in him the values of integrity and public service. Mason was drawn to Everett as he spends a lot of time in town and has seen the investments being made in our city. Additionally, he found Everett PD to have a good reputation, which was very important to him when choosing where to work. Mason graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy with honors as well on November 30th. He finished second in his class overall and academically. He's excited to begin serving others and grow in this career while surrounded by amazing peers and leadership. During his free time, Mason enjoys going to the movies, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and spending time with his girlfriend. Thanks, Mason. All right, Kate. All right, next we have Caitlin Ricksecker. Caitlin was born and raised in Goshen, Indiana. After graduating from high school, Caitlin attended community college before moving to Washington State in 2016. Prior to joining the Everett Police Department, Caitlin worked as an administrative assistant at the Monroe Correctional Complex and as a law enforcement technician for the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. Caitlin wanted to be a police officer since she was a small child, and her passion to help others has persisted throughout her various job experiences, each of which have brought her one step closer to making the decision to pursue a career in law enforcement. As Caitlin progressed through the hiring process here at EPD, she felt at home and truly cared about. Also a standout to her is the strong community support we have, which she knows will help her to be successful in this new and demanding career. Caitlin graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on November 30th. She's excited to be back at EPD and knows she has a lot more to learn, but is eager to begin serving the community with compassion and integrity. Caitlin and her husband, John, Snohomish County Sheriff's Deputy, live on a mini farm in the area and love to spend their free time enjoying the outdoors. So thanks, Caitlin. So with that, I present to you all these wonderful officers for swearing in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Do I hear a motion to accept Tom Lane, Hannah Nichols, Mason Pistole, Caitlin Ricksecker, and Brianna Lashley as the newest members of the Everett Police Department?
So moved.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments before we take the roll? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes.
So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Caitlin Ricksecker,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
or a lawful permanent resident,
or lawful permanent resident,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
honestly, and impartially
honestly, and impartially
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police officer
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
So a big congratulations to our new recruits, and thank you, council, for approving those. Very excited to have this great group to join our team. And I have pretty lengthy comments tonight, so I'm going to just apologize in advance for that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the ordinance that was passed last week. Last week, council passed an ordinance mandating our use of PLAs in the city of Everett for all projects over $5 million. And I remained very quiet through the conversations, since this had been a very council-driven ordinance, and I wanted to listen before I provided any of my thoughts. First, I'd like to express my very strong support for project labor agreements and community workforce agreements. As we know, PLAs have a very strong history in Washington State, tracking back to the early 1930s, including major public works projects like the Grand Coulee Dam. I believe that PLAs ensure project stability, fair pay, health and safety of workers, and it can also be used to incorporate equity goals, which I think most of you know are very important to me. PLAs and community workforce agreements are particularly beneficial for very large-scale construction projects. In 2019, I championed the city's first PLA policy in partnership with our local unions, and that was passed by City Council. And it was with great pride that I brought that forward, and I look forward to continuing that work to support our local trades once again and moving forward. Our unions and our relationship with our unions are of utmost importance to the city. The work done by our represented employees keeps our city going. It provides the essential services we rely on, like building our roads and coming to our aid when we're most in need, ensuring our safety and our access to clean water, and providing essential transportation services, as well as so much more. At last week's meeting, I listened to many compelling arguments that were shared for and against Ordinance 391222, both from this dais as well as from members of the public. And since that time, I've met with several of our local stakeholders, including leaders from our unions, our city unions, community members, staff, and our staff have a wealth of expertise in managing our city's projects. Our team and I have also looked at how other municipalities and agencies have structured like policies. I'm deeply concerned that the current policy has not been vetted enough by our legal experts and our staff, who are the public servants responsible for delivering our city projects, as well as very important partners like our women and minority-owned business community. Staff shared significant reservations about this policy as it's currently written, and I take their concerns very seriously. All our department leaders are very well respected in their fields and hold themselves to an incredibly high standard. The team members at the City of Everett are passionate about public service and only want what is in the best interest of our city, our residents, our taxpayers, and our community as a whole. Our directors and staff are our teammates, not our opponents, and they want to work with administration and City Council to deliver public projects that meet the goals for our elected leaders, as well as the city's duty to protect public interest. It's in my judgment that there is too much that we don't know about how this ordinance will affect our city, including its impact on our budget, our staffing needs, and our ability to consider the community's best interest. It also doesn't consider our small minority and women-owned businesses and the timelines for current and future projects. Our staff have not had sufficient time to understand why other comparable-sized local cities have not mandated PLAs. I also had the opportunity to meet with a council member this evening and discuss whether there was an opportunity to make amendments tonight. And unfortunately, council procedures don't allow that with the timeline that's needed for me to make this change. The PLA-related policies for the City of Seattle, for King County, for Sound Transit, and other public entities includes safeguard language that allows them some control over what projects will be subject to a PLA. Our current ordinance that council passed last week does not. Some include criteria to consider PLAs on a project-by-project basis, and I believe it would be a mistake to not take the time to better understand this, and that would place the city at significant risk. As mayor, it's my job to lead the city and make decisions that improve the quality of life for our residents, and it's my duty to ensure that we are working in the public best interest at all times. Unfortunately, there are too many unknowns and unaddressed concerns with this ordinance in its current form, and because of this, I would like to announce that I'm exercising my authority under Article 4, Section 1 of the Everett Charter to veto ordinance number 3912.22. I don't use that authority lightly, and I fully understand the gravity of this situation. As Council President Stonecipher shared last week, this ordinance is one of the most impactful and complicated pieces of policy that council has seen in years. And we need more time to get this right. I know that there are people on this dais and people in this room that are disappointed, and I don't take this veto lightly. As a commitment to getting the work done successfully, I'm going to be forming a task force to study best practices and will bring back another ordinance that addresses the concerns we've heard over the past few weeks. I'm directing our Public Works Director, our Parks and Facilities Director, and our City Attorney to appoint staff members from their teams to participate on the task force. I've also asked our represented team from ASME to appoint someone to the work as well. And I'm asking Council President Stonecipher to select 2 council members, ideally from conflicting sides of this issue, to co-chair the task force. Additionally, I've directed staff to prepare an apprenticeship resolution for council's consideration in early 2023. That will formalize our commitment to apprenticeships and improve our apprenticeship utilization citywide, and the important opportunities that those create for those looking to enter the construction trades. And in the meantime, our current PLA resolution that was brought forward in 2019 still stands and will continue to be in place until a new ordinance is crafted and approved. As a reminder to all of you, the current PLA resolution requires staff to evaluate any project over $5 million on whether it would be in the public's best interest to implement a PLA. I want to reiterate that this is not a no, it's a request to get this important piece of legislation right. And finally, I want to thank everyone on the dais for their passion on this topic. I'm committed to working with you to find a path forward that's beneficial for everyone. I've printed copies of my message to council, which Nick or Lori can bring up for anyone who'd like one. And I look forward to continuing this conversation next year. I also, just as a side note, want to note that I'm going to be out next week. So with that, I just want to wish everybody happy holidays. Please have a happy and safe holiday season, and I look forward to this conversation as well as other future work in 2023. With that, I have no further comments this evening. Thank you, President Stonecipher.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, and given the mayor's announcement and the fact that our council comments would normally happen at the end of the meeting, I will ask if there are any council members that would like to make a comment at this time in response to the mayor's. Councilmember Zerlingo.
Thank you, President Stonecipher. I also will have more to say as appropriate after more careful analysis. But I do want to say that I support Mayor Franklin's action. I've been working for nearly a year to understand the issues around PLAs. And as the chair of the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, I see that as a core responsibility. Over many months, I've spoken with labor representatives, contractors, contractor associations, legal experts, staff, other council members, especially as Mayor Franklin mentioned, the ones who were responsible for delivering these projects on budget and on time and using the public's resources. I've read volumes of information and studies from a variety of sources, including the labor interests, and have held committee meetings to understand in more detail how project contracting works and how it can work better. I worked with a range of experts and interests to create an alternative ordinance that would advance labor interests and the buildup of skilled labor resources while still being workable for the city and vitally protecting the public interest for all of Everett's community members. That's the critical point, all of Everett's community members. That's who we're accountable to. We've heard many comments from union business and political leaders, and I appreciate their advocacy for their interests and the interests of their members. However, my study of the issue and my allegiance to the whole community made it clear to me that the overall interest of the public was not being protected by an ordinance that mandated all PLAs for even modest projects and specifically omitted provisions to protect the public interest. You'll recall that my amendment to restore this protection was defeated a week ago, as was my amendment to adjust the threshold for inflation. Given the intensity of discussion and opinions on this matter, it's clear to me that Mayor Franklin's action is both correct and courageous. Of course, this is not the end of the issue. As Mayor Franklin said, I expect to work with all parties to continue to advance the working conditions for labor and the increase in skilled labor resources and the opportunities for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members who would like to comment at this time? Councilmember Vogely and then Councilmember Fossey.
That was very nicely written. Thank you, Mayor. I wholeheartedly disagree, but we all know that. She has vetoed as per the section 4, and I brought the charter so I could get it right, but you know, whatever. I would like to be out in the open saying we can revisit this, likely not tonight, but possibly next week, also in accordance with the charter of the city. And that's all I'm going to say right now.
Councilmember Fossey.
So, I know that you undertake this with great consideration, and that it is no easy feat, given I don't think that that you've done this before, as far as vetoing, yeah. So, as far as the concept of staff being teammates and not our opponents, I feel like that is a bit of a driven comment that I don't think anyone on council here, especially when they're fighting for an ordinance that is for workers, and that is the premise of this whole entire concept, was to fight for workers, feel that staff are opponents. It doesn't mean that we can't correct information given our knowledge and expertise on a situation and a subject. But then there's also the concept of when we're working on policy and we have conflicting policy from your words, the other side, coming forward and information from the administration is being fed on the work that we're doing to the other side. It does create for more of a conflict that is necessary for council to be engaging in, and it feeds into that less of a collaborative environment. So I appreciate staff and the work that they do, and they work very, very hard, but it doesn't mean that we can't disagree with them. But on the same end, I expect administration to act accordingly. And it is a shame that you did not reach out to the authors of this ordinance and the council members working on it, because as you saw in that late afternoon meeting today, which I did not hear about the veto or the goal to veto this ordinance until late afternoon, after meetings were already had. And so there was no real opportunity to provide and address those specific items that, were the be-all, end-all. And when we tried to provide that information, we were told it was too late. And there was work trying to be done on this to address those specific issues, and the response received was too late and not collaborative. I'm just going to say I'm very disappointed with how this has played out and the actions being done, but I look forward to hopefully being in the part of being able to have input on how these things go forward and who's a part of that discussion.
Any other council members would like to make a comment that haven't spoken yet? Yeah. Councilmember Vogely.
I know that, thank you, Mary, by the way, a lot of very common things you just said. Sorry, Councilmember Fossey. Last week, when we did pass it, the ordinance, we mentioned getting together some folks to work on the actual PLA template. And I hear that Mayor has offered up a new group of individuals to work on another ordinance. And I'd like to work on an actual PLA template. So, with, of course, staff. I think that that's still an opportunity that we can do because it will happen. We will have a PLA, we will have a template, and it's going to happen. Whether it's every single project over 5 million, and like I said last week, 100,000, because it's going to be so rad. That work still needs to be done. And it didn't sound like that was what was going to be incurred in the mayor's group. So with or without a second, it's going to happen. I'm going to do it. But now you know.
Thank you. Any other council members would like to make a comment? I'm going to ask City Attorney Hall, can you please, it's been a while since I've reviewed the charter with regard to vetoes. Can you remind us the options at this point for an override of the veto?
Sure.
And is there a time limit on that?
The charter suggests that there should be a motion for reconsideration tonight, but that's not a requirement. You could probably do it as late as next meeting. And of course, as you know from looking at the charter, if there are 5 votes to override the veto, the ordinance becomes law. If there are fewer than 5 votes, then the ordinance fails. I would just also like to mention as a housekeeping matter that the charter says the mayor's written objections should be included in the minutes, so I'm sure the clerk will include those objections in the minutes, and I would recommend that you simply include the entire veto statement verbatim in the minutes.
Thank you. So the charter does not specify that it has to happen at the next meeting, is that correct?
It does not specify it has to happen at this meeting.
Okay.
But when you read the charter and your procedures together, I would not want to tell you you can do it later than next meeting.
Okay.
And have it be valid. I would strongly recommend it you do it no later than next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So we, I guess if anyone would like to bring that forward, you can contact me sometime this week. Would we want to, would that need to appear on the agenda?
It's not legally necessary, but probably a good practice.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor. I did want to make just a few comments. I agree with what has been said. Of course, I made most of my comments last week, but I do appreciate that you listened to the conversations that we were having and hearing from other stakeholders who didn't feel represented in the decision that was made by the majority of council last week. And I think an opportunity to review and create a commission to look at it and decide exactly what would work best for our community would be it is very obviously that's what I was hoping that we were going to do, and tried to make a motion to do that last week. So I appreciate that you're bringing that forward, and we'll get something that works. It's interesting because when you look at, aside from the mandate, the resolution that we are working under is very similar to the ordinance that was approved, and the difference being whether it was mandated. And my impression from the conversations we had, was that there was really no negotiation or collaboration on that issue. So I understand where we got where we were. And so I appreciate your decision to veto this so that we can go back and review that again and see if that does make sense. Because as you point out, there aren't other cities that do that. With regard to the question of whether we do the PLA draft right now, my understanding of it is that that comes after you know what the criteria are in your ordinance. So I guess that would probably, in my opinion, might be an outcome of the commission that would be looking at this. So more to come on that, and we will move on to ask Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Hello, President Stonecipher. We do. First, we do have some written comments that we received from Andrea Tucker, Cami Gray, Fred Safstrom, Joe Sievers, Neil Matty, Nicholas Bratton, Patrick Hall, and Joey and Inhi Farrick. And these have all been provided to council administration and to the clerk to be part of permanent record. We have individuals sign up remotely and in chambers. I'll start with remote individuals on Zoom. From what I understand, they all want to speak on item 22, but if any would like to speak now, if you could either turn on your camera or use the raise your hand function. Otherwise, I'll call upon your name when we reach that agenda. Right now, I have 2 individuals, so Jennifer, if you could please unmute yourself, state your full name and city of residence for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I'll have a timer here in just a moment. And if you could unmute your mic. There we go. Go ahead.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, hang on. I wrote down what I wanted to say because I get flustered, so I'm just going to read. My name is Jennifer Cross, and I own the dog spot located here in Everett on the corner of 36th and Smith. I am speaking tonight in favor of the business improvement area proposal for our neighborhood. I have owned the dog spot for almost 15 years now, and during that time, I have come to realize that the success or failure of my business is directly tied to the success or failure of our neighborhood. Safety and the perception of safety directly impact whether I win new clients, retain current clients, and even whether I can attract and retain staff. The actual safety of the neighborhood is critical for me, but the perception of safety is just as important and sometimes even more important. I say this to mean that there have been very few times in the last 15 years where I have felt the neighborhood is unsafe, but there have been many, many times where it looks unsafe. Trash, graffiti, obvious drug use, verbal assaults on my customers. And these times have impacted my business just the same as an actual break-in might. The state of the neighborhood has ebbed and flowed a lot during my time here. I have always felt supported by the city and by the Everett police, who are nothing short of wonderful, and there have been many great programs that have helped, but the city can't be everywhere at once, and so the chance to directly influence the fate of the neighborhood is one I jumped at. For me, the BIA is just another tool in our toolbox for keeping the neighborhood safe. More eyes on the street, more hands dealing with trash and graffiti. Another chance to make sure the neighborhood stays the safe and clean place I need it to be to stay successful here. I have been involved with the ESDA for many years now and have seen how their programs help my business. I trust that they will make sure the BIA is a strong and helpful part of the neighborhood. In closing, I ask you to help me keep our neighborhood and therefore my business strong by voting yes to the BIA.
Thank you, Jennifer.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe Steve wished to speak right now. Oh,
Sure,
okay.
you bet.
So if you could please state your full name, city of residence for the record, and timer starts now.
Great. My name is Steve Alman, and I just want to thank you for listening to this. I'm the president of Pacific Power Batteries, and I'm the owner of commercial property at 38th and Broadway. Sorry I can't attend. I've got a really bad cold, so took the mask off because I know it wouldn't happen. Tonight, I ask you not to form the Everett Station District Alliance that will form a business improvement area. I know you must be tempted to hand over the responsibility and the costs of keeping this area safe and clean to the Alliance. but I oppose it for reasons described in my testimony from December 11th of 2019. Number one, it's another tax with several big promises. Number two, the Alliance/BIA proposes another layer of bureaucracy and is not really needed in Everett. Number three, keeping the properties in this area safe and clean is our responsibility as owners. And number four, formation of the BIA will not solve or eliminate homeless, vandalism or graffiti, or crime. I believe that reducing the problems at hand will occur when businesses, meaning our customers, are willing to become involved and to pay more in taxes and pay the government to make changes. I would rather pay the city of Everett to hire the staff and expertise to pay for social services professionals to help the 80% of the homeless people into pallet houses, treatment facilities, or incarceration and get them detoxed. Yes, I'm asking you to raise the taxes to pay for better pathways for treatment, temporary housing, and more police officers and social workers. However, if you do decide to form the ESDA BIA, then please allow adjacent businesses like ours to opt in rather than to simply be assimilated into the organization. If we business owners see that the BIA is making improvements, then please give us the option of recognizing that the ESDA is doing a good job and things are improving in the Everett Station area. We want this to work. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Steve. Would anyone else on Zoom wish to speak now or wait till we get to item 22?
I'll speak if you don't mind.
Okay, Joey, go ahead and state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. My name is Joseph Abraham Ferrick. My wife is Inhi. She's not with me right now. We own some property, 3102 Smith Avenue, right under Elevated Pacific, south of that. So I just wrote a little letter. Dear City of Everett Council members and Mayor Franklin, I am in full support of creating the Everett Station District Business Improvement Area. We own a property south of Elevated Pacific on 2212 Pacific, 3102 Smith Avenue, and safety is our main concern for our neighborhood. This is something that needs to be done now and not later. A little bit of something now is better than a whole lot of nothing. The area is a hangout for people and drugs, extreme littering, and criminal behavior, as well as people who work in the area and use it for transportation for the bus and train. It's a major hub. It would be a positive change. It would be positive to change the narrative and to clean it up as a vibrant area by transportation close to downtown amenities and to provide affordable housing in the future. This is right by a future light rail hub, but our most urgent and important, it's right by the new hub area, but it's most important and urgent now that the streets of Everett be safe, clean, and peaceful for the community. And I use this analogy as like when we were kids, we used to ride our bikes around the neighborhood, and I'd like my kids to have that same benefit. Right now, it's not safe. So I disagree with the gentleman from before. The BIA will provide security and clean up litter and improve the area greatly by having a strong presence, something greatly needed, and being active in community events, something greatly needed, and promoting neighborhood businesses, etc. Landowners will participate as well as the city. So the city gets approximately, this is what I believe, I'm not sure it's correct, but they get 3 times the purchasing power for every dollar spent, which makes fiscal sense and provides a ton of value for the community, and most importantly, promotes peace, safety, and community, in my opinion. Thank you for your time and service, much appreciated. That's how I feel. So I appreciate your time. And it's, it's something really emotional because, the other day I took my kid there and there's people smoking fentanyl in the street and he doesn't even want to go up there. They don't want to come to the property, because they're afraid. And sorry for being emotional, but it's just, something needs to be done now. That's all I have to say. Thank you all very much and happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Joey. And just to confirm, Michael, you would like to wait?
Oh, I'd like to go now if possible.
Sure. I'll reset the timer, and then If you could state your full name, city, residence, and you can start now.
Oh, well, hello, my name is Michael Kelly. I live in Seattle, but I'm here representing Forterra Northwest. And I want to thank you all for the opportunity to comment on the proposed Everett Station business improvement area. Forterra supports the creation of the BIA in this neighborhood, and we encourage the council to adopt the proposal that will be presented here tonight. Forterra was part of the original effort to create a BIA in the Station District neighborhood, and we followed the evolution of this process over 4 years. We really believe in the power of communities to shape their own future. And whether that's through the work of volunteers enhancing the health of the city parks through the Green Everett Partnership, or the work of business and property owners coming together to address common needs in the Station District neighborhood, community-driven initiatives are a cornerstone of sustainability. Tonight's proposal is the product of extensive neighborhood input and illustrates how closely the Everett Station District Alliance listened to the desires and the concerns of the stakeholders across the community. With a streamlined budget, a narrower mandate, and a reconfigured geography, this proposal will effectively serve the needs of those property owners who want expanded services in a fair and efficient way. The challenges faced in this neighborhood aren't going to resolve themselves unless the city, property owners, and businesses approach solutions with a shared sense of purpose and the right resources. The neighborhood won't become the safe, clean, welcoming place the community wants it to be. So we ask you to please adopt the BIA, and thank you very much for your time and allowing me to testify tonight.
Thank you, Michael. So moving to those in chambers, I have numerous that want to wait till we get to item 22, but I do have one right now that would like to speak, and that's Paula, if you come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I have a copy for you, for legal, for the mayor, and for the council.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Paula Townsell from Everett District 3. I've been attending council meetings and public hearings for months now and provided new information regarding redistricting and the fatally flawed process. First, I would like to commend this city council, the mayor, and the staff for the important work during this time, passing a difficult budget, supporting our Providence nurses, listening to the concerns of Everett transit workers, and providing forward-thinking legislation with the PLA. Now I'm respectfully asking this full council provide accountability on redistricting. It's time to rescind your approval of the redistricting plan and remand it back to the commission for completion of the mandated processes, because only then should council offer approval. Everett City Charter Article 2.1C mandates, prior to the adoption of a districting plan and district boundaries, the commission shall conduct public forums. At least one public forum shall be held in each then existing district, and at least one public hearing shall be conducted on a citywide basis. I'd like to recap what we now know based on staff testimony, public information request, and my research. A public hearing was not held. This fact cannot be emphasized enough. There was no citywide at-large public hearing. Yet prior to voting, this council was told the opposite, and that is a fatal flaw. This council successfully holds regular public hearings within prescribed decorum and formalities, which I've been attending these past months in this very chamber. The commission must hold a public hearing. Commissioners failed to achieve quorum at in-district community meetings. The poorest attendance was when only 3 of the 9 commissioners attended. Forums were not recorded, so absent commissioners never heard the speaker's comments. A public forum was not held in then existing District Number 1. It was at a District 2 venue. Residents of District 1 objected at the time, but those objections were ignored. The lack of opportunity to testify to the full commission would have been less egregious if the public hearing had ever occurred. All forums, including the hybrid, limited speakers to only a single meeting, regardless of lacking a quorum or if different commissioners were present to hear individual speakers. The community meetings process simply ignored, dismissed, and marginalized public input. Each of you understand the importance of following the charter, correcting errors and not perpetuating injustice for a decade by simply hoping the 2032 commissioners understand the city charter better. Hope isn't a strategy for good policy. Let's not hope for a better process in a decade. 5 of you were elected through the representative districts model as codified in the Everett City Charter. So again, I respectfully ask, will the city of Everett follow the mandates in our city charter? Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And that's all we have for, off topic of item 22.
Very good, thank you, thank you. We will move on to an administrative update, if we have one this evening.
I don't have an update, but just a comment based on kind of observations the last 3 weeks. I would just ask, maybe it's a New Year's resolution, but we all focus on decorum going forward. Every legislative body I've participated in certainly doesn't malign colleagues and would never malign the intentions of staff. So I think going forward, it's important that everyone keep in mind, I think everyone at the city, you council members, the mayor, our staff certainly are working in the best interests of this community from their perspective. So while you might disagree from a policy perspective or from an ideological one, accusing someone of malintent, dishonesty is not helpful, it's not productive, and it's not appropriate in public meetings. I think Lori and I work our level best to give everyone opportunities to contact us if they have questions ahead of meetings, and we'll answer them as honestly as we can with the information we have available to us. But that's my request tonight, is that going forward, we do a better job, and it's all of us collectively. I'm not pointing this at anyone in particularly, of giving everyone the benefit of the doubt that we're working together towards a common goal of making Everett the best city we can. And yeah, maligning people is not a way to do that. And so that's my comment tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney, Mr. Hall, do you have anything for us this evening?
We're not requesting an executive session, and we do not have a report. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the 8 consent items?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Seconded.
A motion and a second for the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We will move on to the proposed action items. They are all second readings and have been read into the record at a prior meeting. Are there any questions on any of the actions that are proposed to appear at a future agenda?
I have a couple questions on a couple of the items.
Councilmember Fosse.
And forgive me if I missed this, because I know it, some of it predated my time on the council, but the programmed available funding for item number 10 was $5,460,000, correct? And the threshold was originally lower than that? Is that correct?
Let's see. I see Ryan Sass, our Public Works Director, coming to the podium.
Good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. All right, I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. So you're referring to the Plans and Systems Ordinance that was in place that established the original programmed available funding for the Port of Everett Combined Sewer Project?
Yes, the Port of Everett Combined Sewer Main. Was it always at $5,460,000 or?
I'd have to go back and look at our records. Often we'll have 2 ordinances. We'll bring one for design and then we'll amend it when we have construction estimate. And so this is the funding that was originally programmed for construction.
Did that predate the 2019 resolution on PLAs?
I'll have to look at my schedule. I've got all that information, but I don't have it at my fingertips. This project was contemplated, and it was on a super short time frame because of time restrictions from the Port of Everett and their project goals for their new terminal on what was the KC site. And so this project was delivered on an extreme kind of crash schedule.
Was the process at the time, though, So you proceeded without a PLA, and I understand the reasonings for
Yeah.
not doing that, but was the process at the time of notifying council that you don't do a PLA, or you just go ahead with as proposed?
The process at the time was that we would bring to council a recommendation if we were going to recommend a PLA for a project. We did not
Okay.
recommend one for this project because of the schedule.
Okay. And then I think my other question was the item number 9. What was the reason for over budget on that one?
Item number 9, I'm not sure.
Which was the 40th Place landside repair?
Oh, okay, thank you. The previous item. Yeah, that was a neighborhood landslide. Our original estimate was just based on a quick field observation. That established our programmed available funding, and then after that, we did geotechnical work, and we proceeded with the work, knowing that we would close it with additional funds.
Okay, okay. And kudos for the water main replacement going under budget on that one.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zerlingo.
Director Sass, a question again on number 10. Do I remember correctly that this was the project that was mandated for us to do? We had to commit to do it, but we didn't know the underground conditions. We had a very short time frame and compulsion to do it by Department of Ecology, if I remember right. And then more material was discovered in the actual excavation that needed to be handled, and that was part of the reason the cost. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. We didn't have time for additional subsurface exploration, which would be our usual practice, so frankly, it was a brute force approach that we were required to take.
I think this was one of the things that came before the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee. You explained why sometimes these things have compulsory limits and no real time to study. You've just got to pull the trigger and go. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
Since we're all talking about this PLA stuff, I did look back at the ordinance originally said yes to, and it was under the $5 million threshold, 4 point something. And reading that, and we can all go back and look at it, in a few of the different ones that have been over $5 million, it has stated in the summary, and I didn't bring them with me tonight, but I have them highlighted. It was stated in the summary that there was just a little mention, no mention of PLA, but a mention of like, yeah, we're not gonna change anything. That's totally ad-libbed, that's not what it said at all, but actually I could find it. And this didn't have any mention of yes or no on the PLA. But then again, it was, you know what? I'm gonna save this and we're gonna talk about it later, because originally it was under the 5 million, but now it's like 10 total, right? I mean,
Yeah,
9.2.
the engineer's estimate for construction, the programmed available funding was the number you see here, and the engineer's estimate was in the 4 million and something. I don't recall the exact estimate.
So 2 different estimates?
No, the construction cost estimate is always different than the programmed available funding. The funding is the funding ordinance. When we start the beginning of the project, we set aside a certain amount for design or construction. Then we do the process of the project, and part of that, when we complete design, we come up with a construction cost estimate. But the programmed available funding is typically larger than the construction cost estimate because it contains other costs in addition to just the construction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think hearing so many questions about our construction process, I think it'd be really helpful if we had a briefing at council sometime in the new year, just about kind of how the process goes under the different types, because it is confusing when things come forward, when we have that. So maybe we can get you back, Ryan, to just kind of go through the process so that we get everybody kind of understanding how these programs flow and the pieces that come to council and how those estimates are arrived at and all that. I think it might be helpful for a refresher.
Certainly be happy to do that.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on proposed action? None. We'll move on to our action agenda, and we will move to item 15. Award and authorize the mayor to sign a contract from request for proposal number 2022-002, automated traffic safety camera program with Nova Global Incorporated in the amount of $503,868 annually for 5 years, with one 5-year extension option as substantially provided. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? I will second it. Do we have any questions or comments on item 15?
I got a bunch.
Councilmember Ryan.
Great. Who's the, I have some questions. I was wondering who on staff I can pester. Great.
It's team.
All right, thanks, friends. So I read through the contract, like a good council member, former paralegal. Under Exhibit A for services, talks about the systems and Novoa Global, if I'm saying that correctly. It mentions that they're going to install 11 systems, and then up to 10 additional systems may be added at the option of the customer, us, with NG's consent. So I would appreciate some clarification on if there are additional cameras that would be installed, would that come back before council for approval, or is that something that administration could request on their own?
If we amend the contract, we'll be bringing it back to council for council approval of the amendment.
Great, don't go anywhere. Next, under the same, that same contract, section 3.4 talks about cooperation with police and courts, and it mentions that all citations shall be reviewed and approved by the customer's police department prior to mailing. So I was curious who that responsibility falls on. Would that be additional staff? Like, it's my understanding that every department at the city is at the brim of what they can take on. So this sounds like a pretty heavy administrative burden. So maybe Chief Templeman could add in too, or if you guys don't know. So, sorry, my question
Certainly.
is
Corey
that,
Hurt.
is it an additional staff person, or if it's a current staff person, do they have the capacity to take this on?
Certainly, thank you. Corey Hurt, City Traffic Engineer. This program would add 4 full-time positions. One of those would be a police officer that would be assigned to review those. In reality, that could be split amongst a couple positions, but there is an FTE as part of this project.
Great. Who are the other 3?
Let's see, the 3 positions, one would be somebody, a court clerk to help administer. One would be a traffic technician to go out and study and help administer any projects that come out of this. And then also a traffic engineer, associate traffic engineer, who would be responsible for designing safety projects from revenue that might come from this program.
Great. And then the cost for the new FTEs is folded into the revenue that would be generated from this. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thanks. With still some to spare for other projects? Under section 5, it mentions the public education campaign, and 5.1.3 mentions preparing, publishing, that NG shall assist the customer, us, with a public awareness campaign. And such assistance shall consist of preparing, publishing, and printing a brochure for distribution. So I was curious, like, what that looks like, who would it go to? Just a little, to flesh that out a little bit more about what that means.
So we'll be working, the supplier will be working with our communications department to brand this, the brochures and anything that we decide to move forward with. But it's a service that they offer us, and they did provide some samples. Did I attach their proposal response? So if you have their proposal response, I can direct you to the pages where some of those sample documents would be. And so it would, I believe their proposal response, if I scanned it, and if not, I'll get you a copy of it. And I can flag it for you if you have another question for Corey. I'll actually can even hand you the original and you can look at it.
Okay.
But they did provide some samples that they've done for other public agencies, and ours would be directly for our agency and what our campaign is, how long we intend to give for warnings, et cetera.
With the distribution, who would be receiving these brochures, like, and how would they be sent out?
That was yet to be determined at this time.
And then mailing and whatnot, would that be the city's responsibility to incur the postage costs?
I think when we were looking at the public campaigns, we were looking at internet and web. We weren't looking at mailing. So we were really looking at getting it out from an electronic means, but we can work with the supplier on that. That does say printing.
Yeah, it says preparing, publishing, and printing a brochure. So I work in the Council of Liaison, or Council of Neighborhoods Liaison, and we talk a lot about ways that we can proactively reach out to the community and engage them. So I'm just curious
So
if there's.
they're then responsible for the printing and publishing, and we didn't discuss the mailing.
It doesn't say mailing. I guess I was thinking that those might be available at the school,
Yeah,
you know, for
yeah,
example,
for-
the school's library.
On our
or-
buses, I think we were intending to
Yeah,
put it out in
or
public
the
places. The
libraries.
library, exactly.
I see an opportunity for partnership if they would be willing to incur the costs for printing, or if that, and then if there's ways that there can be additional information on city services, city engagement, to just kind of put it all together into one outreach document to the city, but I'd leave that up to other folks to decide, I guess. I wanted to confirm under Section 7 reporting, 7.6, it mentions that NG shall provide the requested record, being the video recording, to the customer within a reasonable time frame following such request, but in no event later than 7 days following the date the request is received by NG. I just wanted to confirm that that is a reasonable time frame, especially for public records requests, because I know there's a limited amount of time that we would have to respond to somebody if they wrote in with a public records request.
I cannot address the public records requirements, but we do know that the video will be up for them to view. And we did view a sample of their demonstration of them viewing, of what the customer experience would be like for them to be able to view, to validate whether or not it really, they can actually go through and see for themselves.
Okay,
And
great.
They've got plenty of time then to then contest that ticket or not.
Okay, great. So yeah, I know just like notifications, and want to make
Yeah.
sure that like
They'll get
that window
linked
isn't too narrow or too broad or right-sized. Jump ahead of the BIA conversation.
This company works with, they currently have a contract with the city of Tacoma, so our contract is mirrored very similarly to the city of Tacoma's contract. So other public agencies in the state of Washington have the same laws that we do, and we have vetted this through to make sure that we're in compliance.
Great. And just as my added commentary, I, recognize that this is the contractual agreement that for services and installation with Novoa Global. So I was curious for administration, will council have any opportunities to weigh in on, backtrack, how can council weigh in on the equitable practices for infraction collection and reporting rollout?
I think Corey or Teresa have a little bit of information on that tonight. I'd also, at the end, suggest that Corey share for the community, if there is additional revenue generated from this program beyond the cost to deliver it, there are clear restrictions on what that revenue can be used for. It might be good to remind the community of that.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Thank you. So what's before us today is entering into a contractual relationship with this entity for installation and for reporting and whatnot. And so I'm curious on like the next steps of when it is implemented and it's up and running and somebody gets a traffic infraction. Will council have any opportunities to weigh in on the just ways that we can equitably roll out the program? Because there had been, some council members had equity concerns about ways that red light cameras might disproportionately impact communities of color. So are there any other opportunities beyond just this contract where council can help guide that process?
I can speak a little bit to that further, but in terms of the equitable delivery, there are some reporting measures that are available to us. I just recently know that they vetted that more with the contractor. So can you speak to what,
Certainly. So the vendor would provide us with reports. They're typically broken down by zip code rather than, say, census tract or something like that. And from that information, we can, make some assumptions about, who might be cited. However, the agreements with the Department of Licensing are very restrictive on how that information is used, and so it wouldn't be like we could get a scatter plot of all of the cited drivers. So the information would be, at this point, is broken down by zip code.
Thanks. So I guess my question is more about, will there be any opportunities for council to engage in a discussion about equitable ways that the program can be implemented, like forgiveness for first-time offenders, or a tiered system for infractions, or like, is this the last thing that's coming before council, or is there an opportunity for us to weigh in on the program elements of it?
Well, certainly we can come back and report on that, but so far as I know, this is the final.
This is the contract which signs it. And so then, Corey, do you want to talk about your intention for your rollout program of what how the program you plan to?
Certainly. Yeah. So as the program is rolled out, there will be a 30-day period where the signs are installed and the system is tested and commissioned. And then 30 days following that, there will be a period where drivers do not receive a citation, they receive a warning. And so that allows for 60 days for drivers to see the strobe flashing and see the signs up and see the system in operation before the first citation is reviewed and issued.
And the sites were chosen based off of traffic safety data. So the number of crashes, maybe you want to address that as well.
Yeah, certainly. We went through, and were able to analyze 6 intersections that are among the highest crashes, the highest number of injury crashes, and also the highest number of red light running crashes in the city of Everett. And so we used a data-driven process to select the locations. All of the locations do have some geographic equity. They're all more than a mile apart. And there are 4 of the cameras from 41st North and 5 are from 41st South. So they are, for the red light running camera program, they are fairly evenly distributed in the city, but they are all on arterial to arterial connections and signals.
Great, thanks. Lori's coming
I
off
think
mute.
the short answer here is, generally, this would be the last action that council would take, but administration would be happy to work with you to explore if there's additional information that you're looking for as a council, or some additional data that we can provide, I think, beyond this. But generally, at this point, it becomes programmatic, and the implementation is the responsibility of staff.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I recall the conversation from one of our earlier briefings, probably earlier this year, where we talked about, would we have a program where, first-time offenders could get a discount on their ticket. And I think what we concluded at the time, and I can't remember the discussion, but that would need to be more of a global program that we would have within the city, because these aren't the only tickets that people would be receiving. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of other times when someone might get pulled over by a police officer, and maybe that's their first time. So it seems to me that would be somewhat of a separate issue, but maybe worthy of our discussion as well.
Sure, yeah, I think I appreciate hearing that there are potential opportunities for collaboration, and I would appreciate an opportunity to share my input and suggestions instead of a report one way towards me of what's going to happen. Because I've been working on this for a while and following it closely and understand all the nitty-gritty details of it. And so I'd like to, have an opportunity to sit down and share more about ways that the program can have a shining star of equity on it. So that's all.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Zarlingo and then Vice President Tui.
Well, a quick note that I think some of the equity concerns, having read about some of these things earlier on this year, were for communities at other areas of the country where they were clearly not looking primarily at traffic safety at where they were placing cameras, and there were some real equity problems there. And I do remember discussions trying to make sure, as the department has here, where they were focusing on where will make the biggest difference, and certainly crashes, hitting pedestrians, all that kind of thing is an equal opportunity offender. It's as likely to hurt anybody. So I guess I would like to say I think that has. I look forward to seeing what we can learn from this, because it's going to be a little bit tough, as you said, to see what the impact is. But certainly I have, after having that testimony, I have some confidence that the focus was very tightly on the biggest difference we could make in traffic safety and where the biggest offenders in terms of intersections were, I think, except, of course, for the one school zone camera.
Vice President Tui? And then
Yeah, we
Councilmember-
started this process quite a long time ago, and it was even started well before we took it up a few years ago. So I'm glad we're getting to this stage. For me, it's just about public safety throughout our city. We know that a lot of drivers just drive through Everett on their way home, could care less. They're just trying to get through town, and they cut corners, and they go through our neighborhoods. And so really, I really would be surprised if a lot of our zip codes are outside of the city of Everett. But most importantly, I'm really excited about the school zone and the school that we're going to be able to help protect those kids by keeping the speeds down. And I know my intersection at 41st and Rucker is kind of scary, and there's pedestrians trying to walk across 7 lanes, and when you get people driving through there, it is scary. So I'm glad to see this, and I will look forward to reviewing the data. I think it'll be really interesting. So thank you for bringing everything up.
Councilmember Vogely?
A question just came to me, and I don't know if you can answer this, but what if, like, there's one license plate to 5 drivers? Woo, you know, multiple family members that drive, and maybe every single one of them wants to get a speeding ticket, not speeding, a red light ticket. I know they don't want to, but it's just curious how it might. Tell me how the process can differentiate between a driver and a vehicle. Maybe
Certainly.
that's the question.
Sure, that's a fair question. So the citation is issued to the registered owner. And there's an opportunity to contest, just like any other citation. And so as part of that process, there's an affidavit that can be signed that says I was not driving. And so there is built into the process and built into the law the opportunity to contest the ticket, just like any other.
Thank you. And then, never mind, that's all. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fosse?
I do, thank you. In that, I guess it's page A7, and under the public education campaign, when it's talking about the public awareness program, and such assistance shall consist of paying for and installing all signage required by state law and local ordinance or as otherwise required by the customer's city council or customer's municipal code. Can you tell me what that would be?
So all signage, so every one of these intersections needs to be signed to meet state law, which basically says photo enforced, and it's got a picture of a signal on it. And so that needs to be up 30 days prior to the system going live, and so that's what that's referring to.
So one sign.
So one sign, yes, but it's a big sign.
Yeah, so there's one sign. Is it on the pole? Is it, a mile ahead? Is like preparing people for when they're driving up? What does that signage look like?
So we're gonna place that sign at a point where a driver can make the decision whether or not to stop, just like we would any other signal warning sign or any other warning sign. So it'll be upstream of the signal with plenty of time for the driver to see it and react and come to a comfortable stop.
Okay. And if we wanted to have additional signage options to provide for additional warning, then that would be something that council would then need to pass in order to enact that? Or would that be a conversation with you? How would that look?
Oh, I'd welcome that conversation if council has suggestions. The signing is under the purview of the city traffic engineer. I'd be glad to have that conversation.
Great. I'm just saying, as much, especially early on, so even if these are, kind of a longer-term temporary signage to provide additional notice, so maybe if we didn't want to invest in a, permanent fixture of notification, but since this is a new addition, perhaps signage that gave people a lot of run-up notice that may miss, the immediate one sign, might be something that we would want to look into if it's an affordable option for even temporary signage for, the first 6 months or so. And that's not an exact timeline. I'm just suggesting for, longer than 30 days.
Certainly, it's a fair suggestion. When we lowered the posted speed limit on Evergreen Way, we added 2 large orange diamonds at the top of the sign to draw attention to it. We could certainly discuss that.
Okay, great. Yeah, would love to chat on that. When it comes down to under the Public Education Campaign Customer Staff Speakers Bureau, what is that?
What number are you looking at?
5.1.4.
Name and count them.
Customer staff speaker. So when we start this public campaign, it'll be run out of our Public Works, Public Information Officer. And I suspect what they're trying to say there is if there are any questions that person has, they will take the time to answer them.
Okay. So really that's just meaning a staff member at Public Works?
Our Public Information Officer, yes. If there were questions that the vendor's agreeing to answer any of those questions and take time. That's the way I read that.
Okay. My other question is kind of relating to what Councilmember Ryan had brought up. So just so you know where the question's kind of coming from. I remember a lot of the initial discussions when we were talking about that kind of contract that was going to be put out to bid. And it sounded, I don't know if this was the exact language. I felt like something was missing, but I may be remembering incorrectly on that data that was supposed to come back statistic-wise for us to reevaluate kind of like the program. I don't know if it was an annual thing. And I know on page 7.3, there's an annual report, but it sounded like that was a lot more limited initially than what I was thinking that we would be able to get for an analysis on how this was kind of impacting the immediate local community, because our zip codes are pretty big chunks in Everett. It doesn't really tell you if the immediate local community is being impacted disproportionately or particular communities disproportionately by these policies.
Yeah, in our discussion with the vendor, and we just talked with them this week, and all of the vendors we talked to, that's as far as they can break it down. And what they explained was that based upon their agreement with the Department of Licensing about how that data can be used, personal information is very restrictive in how they can use it. Mm-hmm. So they can provide us with information on citations by zip code. We can check with them to see if they can get more granular in that information. But at this point, that's what they're offering most cities. So there is provisions in the contract that they have to come into compliance with the law, and if the law requires them to be more granular in that information, they would have to follow that.
Thank you.
But Corey, I'll just jump in because as I, in my time on council, we would get a complaint from a neighborhood about speeders in the neighborhood, and we go out and put the traffic enforcement police officers out there. And usually the person who called in and complained was the first one who got the speeding ticket, and so then they were really mad about what we did. So I would say, and having received a ticket from one of these cameras, not in Linwood, but in another municipality, my anticipation is that there probably will be some of the local neighborhood people who will get caught up in this thing at least once. And then you get smart and you drive very slowly when you go down that road again.
Yes, that's what we're hearing from other agencies, is that the local neighbors learn very quickly where these systems are, what the directions are that are being enforced, and there's a big drop-off right away in the number of citations.
Yeah, I hope so. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I was curious for the program rollout, what the involvement of our DEI officer is in designing that and input that she's
DEI?
provided.
What's a DEI?
Our equity manager, the equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, okay. What are acronyms? I'll let you handle that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got the contract, you get the program rollout.
Yeah, well, certainly in the program rollout, everybody's going to be involved. There'll be a lot of questions, and but in looking at the program, we did select the lowest base value of $124. It's going to be the lowest amount, citation amount of any city in Washington, tied with many others. But and we also looked at the in school zones as well, where we anticipate, on Casino Road, there being a number of citations, not bumping that up to double as many other cities have done. So that's also going to be $124. So to that extent, we have looked at that. As far as, weighing in on any equity issues, as the project manager, I will always, take those calls, and certainly from our equity people in administration as well. So.
Great. So has our equity manager been involved with conversations up to this point?
I don't believe she was involved in the rating system for the contract.
For the evaluation, we had a number of different departments, from court to police, public works. Our evaluators, we had the full spectrum of everyone who's going to be touching the system. IT, information technology, played a large role in evaluating. So the evaluation was from a very technical standpoint, and also folks from our finance team to evaluate if it was going to comply with all of our financial and infrastructure requirements.
And we can certainly incorporate our equity team into the discussions with Corey moving
Great.
forward too.
Yeah, because I think there's, for an equity standpoint, there's the quantitative analysis that goes into it with the zip codes and just all of the data points, but it's the qualitative analysis that really makes for a thorough equity analysis, to know that communities of color, when they receive a ticket, they don't always have the opportunity to go to a courtroom to contest it, or have, they might be sharing a vehicle, there might be working odd hours. Like, there's all of these different considerations that communities of color are frustrated about with red light cameras. So having our equity manager included in these conversations would help capture that qualitative analysis when the team's already been doing a lot of work on the quantitative analysis side. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I'll just make a few comments. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And I have probably been talking about red light cameras for 15 or 17 years. And certainly the technology has come a long way, so I'm glad the initial look that we had was quite a bit different. It was, well, frankly, there was a lot of concerns about privacy protections in those days. And I really support this because although I know there are concerns about equity and a disparate impact on certain communities, there is in my opinion, a disparate impact in certain parts of our community with regard to the safety of the streets on which they are conducting their lives. And I hope that we will find that this program helps make their streets safer, because these are the areas, I mean, I don't live in these neighborhoods, and, you know, my little dead-end street does not have a lot of pass-through traffic on it. But I hear as one of the main complaints that I hear from our community is really the concern about traffic safety in their neighborhoods and in the areas where they're driving. And we certainly see a lot of that impact being felt in our neighborhoods. So it's a great program. I do welcome the information that we can gather. I think there is some demographic data based on zip code that we could overlay on those data points and find out. I'm interested to see how many of our own residents are receiving citations under this program versus people who are passing through our community. And but at the end of the day, we are at a shortage situation. We have 5 police officers tonight, the most I've seen in a while, and 3 women, which was great. But we don't have enough police officers to be out there handing out tickets and making sure that our community is safe. And we have to use technology as a tool. I mean, if we don't, we can't scale to the point that we need to as our community grows. So I totally support the use of this technology, and I think that there is some caution to it, and look forward to having some good conversations about the information when we start getting that fed back to us. And hope, Corey, that you will bring that information to the Public Safety Committee of the Council on an annual basis at the minimum, but any kind of information that you can bring and share, and see if there's a way that we can tweak the program to make it better and serve our community better will be helpful for all of us.
Thank you.
With that, Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
No.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
No.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 16, Council Bill 2211-53, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled PGSF Bond Street Combined Sewer Improvements Fund 336, Program 033. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 17, Council Bill 2211-54, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Reservoir Number 3 Replacement Fund, Fund 336, Program 016, and repealing ordinance number 3815-21. Do I hear a motion?
So moved?
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Abstain.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 18, Council Bill 2211-55, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled WFP Air Scour Blower Building Replacement. I don't want to own one of those. Fund 336, Program 034. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yeah. Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 19, Council Bill 2211-56, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Edgewater Park Renovations, Fund 354, Program 084, to accumulate all costs for the project. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Just that I hope there's a whole bunch of trees.
It's a park, so I hope so too. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse? Yes. Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan? Yes. President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 20, Council Bill 2211-57, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance amending the Everett Municipal Code to clarify applicability of an 8-year limited property tax exemption, amending Chapter 3.78 EMC. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan, so moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan? Yes. President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 21, Council Bill 2211-59, third and final reading, and adopt an ordinance approving the appropriations of the 2022 revised City of Everett budget and amending ordinance number 3900-22. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan? Yes. President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 22 is a public hearing. I'll read the item and open the public hearing. Council Bill 2211-60, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance establishing an Everett Station District Alliance Business Improvement Area. And we will first take Angie. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? I think we've got at least a couple people.
We do. So first, I'll call on Ellen, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence for the record, and your time has been extended to 5 minutes.
And my name is Alan Mizuta, and I represent interests in both districts 1 and 2. Good evening, Council. I was last here presenting on the BIA attempt 3 years ago. I'm here tonight to report that the ESDA has failed to demonstrate accountability and inclusion since our last meeting. Unfortunately, with the same executive director and president, the divisive behavior continues to be a hallmark of the ESDA. My neighbors have asked that I present to you and speak to 4 main areas, including unanswered misrepresentations, false narratives, questions of public benefit, and a lack of ESDA membership. If this council chooses to condone the behavior exhibited by the ESDA and vote on this council bill, then there is one final ask of our community, and that is to install guardrails. On the issue of unanswered misrepresentations, as some of you are aware, the ESDA has been accused of engaging in questionable tactics in their effort to secure formation of this BIA. These tactics include bald-faced lies to the council throughout the lobbying process, presenting false information in front of the council, and including false information in lobbying emails just hours before final votes. Furthermore, evidence of numerous forged petitions and coercion of petitions signatures from English as a second language neighbors has been documented. The ESDA has been caught participating in misrepresenting control of supposedly vacated public works campuses. This misrepresentation to the legislature was to secure a $200,000 Commerce Department grant. The council and mayor have been presented this 49-page packet containing a sampling of letters from the community documenting these unanswered misrepresentations. Additionally, these issues have been communicated to the executives and the board of organizations who provide financial support to the ESDA in the event they are unaware of this unsavory behavior. On the issue of false narratives, the ESDA director has repeatedly presented 3 main points in support of this reattempt. He has claimed that the BIA was passed in 2019, but it was the ESDA that chose not to enact it due to COVID-19. That is simply an untruth. It was not COVID, but rather a multitude of unanswered questions and misrepresentations that prevented the ESDA from moving forward. He has also repeatedly referred to right-sizing the BIA this time. Put another way, this is an admission that it was wrong-sized before. The exclusion of dissenting neighbors and the use of divisive tactics to further deteriorate communication and camaraderie within the vibrant business area is simply unacceptable. On the issue of public benefit, the city would be the single largest stakeholder with a 25% interest in the BIA. The claims made to you that the annual $71,000 city payment to the ESDA is a 3-to-1 multiplier is not only patently false, but it fails to explain the benefit to the city. In fact, the services outlined by the ESDA are duplicative of existing city undertakings. This raises concerns about the use of taxpayer funds and the city's systemic budget deficit. Director Haugen has reported that Everett Transit, which is already facing an existential financial challenge, would be responsible for approximately half of the payment due to the ESDA. Of note, Director Ryan Sass of Public Works has not, to my knowledge, spoken publicly on an expenditure that would likewise be incurred on his budget for the other half. The ESDA has no experience as a commercial operator or success in proving provision of these commercial services to an area such as ours. Its only record is misrepresentation, non-participation, and even receiving delinquency notices from the Secretary of State for failing to file basic legal requirements for running a business. It is striking to consider that this area with some 300 parcels and over 165 property owners, to consider that the ESDA has never attracted participation of more than 10% of their neighbors. Their ask is only $25 to participate. The majority of the ESDA's 30 members are not stakeholders. They do not own property or operate business within the area or even within Everett. Unlike my neighbors, they would not be ratepayers subject to the thousands of dollars of assessments annually. The ESDA is simply not representative of those invested in our thriving neighborhood. The area's industrial and commercial property owners' property is highly coveted. Historically, there are little to no vacancies in the area. Our final community ask. We ask that you condemn the ESDA's behavior and not sanction the BIA formation. If you vote yes for the ESDA, then we seek guardrails to protect us from being incorporated against our will with such malfeasance.
5 minutes is up.
An amendment, one last sentence if I can, an amendment to the limit of the expansion of the BIA boundaries to only include those property owners who explicitly consent and not by routine expansion of the 10% that the ESDA anticipates is wholly appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And Carrie, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Kari Kwas. I live in Everett in District 1. So good evening, council members. Thanks for hearing this testimony this evening. So the Everett Station District Alliance Business Improvement Area was a good idea that was stalled by COVID-19. Like many ideas given some more time to implement, this BIA has been modified to fit the needs of the property owners and the lead convener to work even better than originally designed. This part of town has historically been an industrial area, and now you see changes because of growth in progress, more tourism, transportation, hospitality. And as we finally someday get Link like real, this is going to be where everyone enters into Everett. So let's make it pretty, right? This is going to be a place where safety improvements, especially with this BIA, are going to change that area as well. The city makes that your top priority all the time. We don't have all the money in the world, but if you can kind of break it down to little groups, we do have the money. So I support that. In addition, it'll benefit us all with the returning of the Wednesday Everett Farmers Market. That'd be nice. Other community events. I would also be happy with better parking signage, the patrols they're going to do overnight, cleaning up teams, trash removal, other things we don't want to talk about in unmentionables. But like the Downtown Everett Association, that group improves our downtown. It brings in events. I mean, think of this summer. My God, all the people that were in downtown. This area of town is going to have more life in it than we expect. And if we don't set the table today, we're going to be behind. So we need to get on that. I'd also like to say, in comment to the guy that just spoke, pretty much every nonprofit in the state was in delinquency this year because the system at the state level was broken. So as treasurer in Northwest, I got the same letter, but it's filed now. So thank you for your time this evening. Please vote yes for the Station District Alliance BIA.
Thank you, Carrie. Patrick, if you could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Patrick Hall. I live in Everett, and I'm the board president of the Downtown Everett Association. Council members, as I stated a couple of weeks ago, the Downtown Everett Association supports the creation of the Everett Station District BIA. We are also deeply concerned about the precedent that would be set by the city offloading the billing of the property assessments. When you look at the city's price tag for a BIA assessment, there's a few things to keep in mind. Your assessment is just one of many, and your dollars leverage many more, which are contributed by the other property owners, not to mention the free labor and funding contributed by BIA volunteers and donors. However, without the city's participation, nobody else would chip in. The city is in essence the host of the potluck. The city's BIA assessment should be more properly thought of as an investment. Much, if not all of that investment, can eventually be returned to the city's top line through increased B&O, sales tax, and property taxes. Although you can easily measure the bottom line cost of a BIA, it's much more difficult to measure exactly how much revenue gets returned to the city through the work of a BIA association. However, if you look at the downtown BIA, you can probably imagine how much less revenue you would receive if downtown were dirty and covered in graffiti, had no flowers and holiday lights, had fewer events, and if nobody were out there working to support and recruit small businesses the way the DEA does. Alternatively, you can imagine how much more it would cost the city to go it alone on those items. The city of Everett is now proposing to become the first city in Washington with a BIA that we know of to offload its BIA billing. There are many reasons why this would not be a good idea. First of all, the city would be abdicating its oversight of tax collections. BIA associations are contractors with a ratepayer advisory board that's completely separate from its board of directors. In theory, the ratepayer advisory board could fire its contractor and hire a different one if its funds are not being managed properly. It's much harder to monitor that if the contractor is overseeing their own billing. Furthermore, the cost of billing would cut into the services that a BIA can provide. BIA associations need to focus on the mission they were created to accomplish, with the city being a supportive partner. It's in the city's best interest for BIAs to succeed. Finally, we believe that there are other options to relieve the city's burden which have not yet been explored. For example, one of the city's stated concerns is the amount of time the staff spend on the phone with ratepayers. The DEA already answers inquiries about the BIA assessment and would like to assist in taking on more phone calls. The ESDA indicated that they wish to assist in a similar way, as stated at a recent council meeting. If consulted, we are happy to work with the city to find even more ways to collaborate on the long-standing partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Ed, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Ed Peterson. Thank you for having this opportunity to speak this evening. I'm the president of the Everett Station District Alliance. I have a full 3 minutes worth of comments, but I need to take a moment and talk about this allegation. There's a small group of property owners who have taken issue with the Everett Station District Alliance, and you may recall that a complaint was surfaced, as was mentioned by Mr. Mizuta, to the Department of Commerce about a grant that was provided to work on a concept for the development of the neighborhood, thinking about a 15-year framework for creating the kind of neighborhood that we'd like to have when light rail arrives in the neighborhood. Mr. Mizuta and his group of three, who call themselves the C2 Preservation Group, appealed to the Department of Commerce, citing all these misrepresentations in the comments he made tonight in a letter of complaint. The Department of Commerce studied and evaluated this complaint, and you may recall receiving a letter, all council members received this, fully exonerating the Everett Station District Alliance and Housing Hope for the supposed misrepresentations that were made. This wasn't adequate to the C2 preservation folks. They appealed it. And again, the Department of Commerce reviewed the materials and again exonerated the Everett Station District Alliance and the Housing Hope applicants for that legislation that was forwarded to the state legislature by Senator June Robinson. The Everett Station District contains the transit center for our community. It has a lot of functions that cause people throughout our city to care about this particular neighborhood and be concerned about the safety and cleaning issues in the neighborhood. We have broad community support from various constituencies. You will note some of those in the letters that were sent to you and the testimony that's being provided. We have worked hard to build collaboration, to build consensus, to address some of the concerns that were surfaced 3 years ago. The COVID situation was the fundamental issue that caused us not to represent the documentation from property owners in February 2020, 2 months after your initial action proving the BIA. These misrepresentations are really unfortunate, and they are coming to you from individuals that are not included primarily in this proposed boundary for the BIA. So I'm hoping that you can understand the context that we're dealing with here. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. 3 minutes for 4 years worth of hard work in bringing this to you is unfortunate because there's a lot more that could be said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Mark, if you could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, Mark Niceother. I don't live in Everett, but we own property on Hewitt Avenue and also on Smith Avenue. The property in Hewitt Avenue is in the BIA, proposed BIA. The property on Smith, they took us out because of the size of the property and the fact we were against it. So I don't know exactly how many property owners are in the area, but I know a huge amount of them were taken out from the original BIA proposal of 3 or 4 years ago. Most of the ones that were taken out because they voted against it. So they talk of having 30 property owners, which is a very small amount considering the size of the area. What they don't describe is how many people are highlighted in blue on that map, but are not in favor of it. It's mainly size that concentrates the percentage that they have with Lowe's, the hotel, and other large property owners that are in favor of it. And that's one of the reasons our Smith Street property was taken out, because it's 4 acres, and they didn't want our negative vote. So as far as the, I wanted to thank you again for the no sit, no lie ordinance, for the tiny houses that were implemented, and for the no overnight parking. I can state without a doubt, having owned property in this area for 45 years, that that was the biggest improvement we've ever seen in our neighborhood, was when that transition took place with those issues. Generally speaking, I don't see anywhere near any of the kind of problems that we had before. Quite frankly, the worst area in this whole neighborhood is on the 3600 block Smith, where the zoology building is at, if anybody knows which one it is. It's right next to the freeway overpass, and that unfortunate property owner has nothing but problems with fires, with transient garbage, dumps, things thrown over his fence. If the state highway department would just fence that corner, that would probably solve the biggest problem, as far as I'm concerned, in downtown Smith Street area. So a number of the organizations that were on the board early on were nonprofits, which most of them don't pay property taxes, or if they do, pay a small amount. As was also mentioned, a lot of the other board members are from organizations like Fortura that spoke that aren't located in Everett. They're located from outside of Everett and were paid to provide studies for the BIA. So it was interesting when I read the information that I got, which the information I got, and you were included, is dated November 29th, which is 20 days after I spoke. And the only reason I spoke last time was because I saw it in the minutes that it was going to be, am I done? Okay.
Wrap it up,
Sorry.
please.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Howie, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Howie Bargreen, 2821 Rucker. I try not to come here. I appreciate what you do, and I've been coming here for a long time. Knew Mark's dad, Eldon, when he moved into the neighborhood, which was, first time I saw him, he was tearing up the railroad tracks. I said, "What are you tearing the railroad tracks up for? Those are ours." But we got together, and the history of these BIAs or organizations goes way back, because we had them. We have one, in downtown. And it would be really tough to be in downtown if we didn't have it. And in theory, the city should be doing all that work, but they haven't for all kinds of reasons. So yeah, it's been the property owners' kind of way of getting wherever they're working and wherever they're doing business in all places, not just Everett. It's been the property owners that got together and decided they wanted to make it better. And that's what's going to probably happen down in Depot area. That's what I hope anyway. I think in Everett, the Downtown Association charged me about $5,000 a year. And that's probably about what it's going to be for the Depot area where I have property on McDougal and Hewitt. And I'm looking forward to having that area better. Today, a homeless guy came up and pointed a gun at one of my baristas and said, "I'm going to rape you." That's not perfect. So I think all of you can understand that we need a little bit more help. I'm not so sure this association is going to, I know this association can be perfect, but I'm willing to spend $5,000 a year to have it better, because I have to protect my people. Thank you.
Thank you, Howie. And I believe it's CJ. If you could come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, council members. My name is CJ Ebert. I am a lifelong resident. Well, I live in LaConner now, but I was raised in Everett. And for those of you that don't know me, I've been in the real estate business all my life. I've done downtown, I've done the waterfront, I've done a lot of industrial property. I have 5 buildings in this area which are excluded from this proposal. I was originally one of the founding members of the Downtown Business Association. I was on the BIA. I oversaw the expansion of it, and I felt very, very strongly about it because I had properties downtown. It's a good thing. Downtown is very pedestrian. The area that we're talking about right now is industrial. It's different. The buildings that I have, I take care of. I do not need duplicity in order to handle what I do. This tax will be passed directly on to my tenants. If you're familiar with triple net leases, that's the way that it works. They pay the taxes, they pay the operating expenses, they pay the insurance. So it's not going to come out of my pocket, but I need to look out for the people that rent from me. I'm part of the exclusion on this. My properties are between 33rd and 34th, between Cedar and Hill. In your ordinance, there's the capacity to be expanded by 10%. I would ask that in the event that this ordinance is passed, that there be an amendment that would allow and prescribe that if that 10% were to be exercised, it would have to come from at least 60% of the people that would impact, and it would have to come from your approval. That's all I ask. I don't really know what else to say. It's a different area than downtown. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, CJ. And President Stonecipher, that's all I have for tonight.
Very good, thank you. Is there anybody who would like to speak who did not speak?
I filled out the form, I'm not sure.
And you don't have the time limit, so.
Okay. Well, I think I'll be well within the time limit for what it's worth. I've presented already and briefed the council. Certainly would take questions, but I have a short prepared statement to reiterate the highlights from the briefings. Thank you, Council President Stonecipher and council members. My name is Brock Howell, the Executive Director of the Everett Station District Alliance. ESDA was incorporated in 2017 and brings together businesses, property owners, residents, and other stakeholders to creatively solve problems, manage change, and plan for a healthy, sustainable, and prosperous Everett Station District neighborhood. The proposed BA is effectively a public-private partnership between property owners and the city. For every $1 the city invests, property owners will contribute more than $3, enabling ESDA to provide critical services that the city and property owners want and need. We learned many valuable lessons from our 2019 effort to establish the BIA, and our outreach to property owners in 2020 and 2021 has helped shape this proposal. First, that the services should be focused on critical needs, and that those needs are first and foremost centered on safety. That's why more than 2/3 of the budget is focused on the Safe and Clean program, most notably through daytime ambassadors and nighttime patrols. There will also be pallet removals, cleanups of major trash pileups, and assistance for parking management in some circumstances. Second, we should start by providing services to the areas of the neighborhood where there's the strongest support, improve the effectiveness of the BIA. That's why in drawing the borders, we created 4 distinct areas, each with strong support. We also right-sized the budget, keeping it very lean. While we hope one day we will prove the effectiveness of the BIA such that property owners will want to join, until we have their support, we won't be looking to expand. We expect that conversations will likely happen, we expect that conversation would likely happen when the BIA is up in 5 years, not on an annual basis. I'll just quickly, Steve Alman, who is outside the BIA boundaries, his properties on and businesses on Broadway, we would certainly love to prove our effectiveness and enter into a contract relationship to provide services, but not to expand boundaries. We want to be able to prove our support. So only supporters outside the boundaries would we want to include, and we can set up that mechanism without changing the ordinance in any sort of way. Third, transparency and accountability are key. This proposal includes several provisions to keep it accountable, including a ratepayer advisory board that represents the diversity of our businesses and properties, an annual ratepayer meeting, budget approval at several levels, reporting on performance metrics to ratepayers and the city, and the short authorization frame of just 5 years before renewal is required. Our neighborhood is a gateway for downtown Everett with entrances from I-5 and the transit station. We are a convergence of the industry of today with the jobs that are so important for us, with the jobs and housing that will be spurred by light rail in the future. As the city continues to grow, the Everett Station District neighborhood needs to be a safe, clean, and active place in order for the neighborhood and the city to be thriving and prosperous. The services funded by the BIA will help us get there. I'd just like to highlight those who have demonstrated their support. We have 30 supporters. We have Howie Bargering, who just spoke, James Buchanan of Axiom Construction, Compass Health, Everett Gospel Mission, James Middleton of Middleton Mixology, Steve and Kim Favorite, Joey Farrick, who you heard on the video, Lori Fox of ML Fox Architectural Woodwork, Glacier Properties LLC, Rand Ballar, Hewitt Worklops LLC, HopeWorks, Kaiser Permanente, Russ Kimball of Everett State Heating and AC, Neil Maddie of NJM Partners and JMC Cabinets, Alex Orleans of Northwest Illogical Supply, Bill Miller of Reliable Security, James Lee, Ben and Andrew Meyer, who own the Lowe's property, Judy Rodriguez, who owns the property of the Dog Spot, Mark Hollander of Delta Hotel, Joe Sievers of Everett Downtown Storage, Craig Scottdahl, GKR LLC, Maury Troughton, Charlotte Walker of CED, the property for CED, YWCA, United Way, Chuck Watts of Z Sport, and Pete Sykoff. These 30 individuals that represent the property groups that they own represent 69.14% of the private property within the boundaries of the BIA that be subject to the assessment. We do think that there are people who are opposed both inside and out. As I've mentioned before, we believe from the past go-around that there's about 8 people who are likely still opposed, and the math hasn't changed this evening from what I can tell, and they represent about 5.87% of the area. Certainly there's probably additional ones who haven't spoken out, just like there's probably additional supporters out there. When we redrew the boundaries, we excluded, I believe, about 10 supporters in the process as well. So it was a hard decision that we had to make in order to right-sizing it to where we had the strongest support. We really appreciate your time. It has been 4 years. There's been definitely some ups and downs in the process, but we're really looking forward to providing critical services that the neighborhood needs and being able to prove our effectiveness, and because that is important for delivering the results that our property owners demand. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak at this time? I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
Second.
Clerk, will you please take the roll on the motion to close the public hearing?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And I know some of my colleagues probably have some amendments that they'd like to propose, but I'd ask if we could first let everyone have an opportunity to ask questions of staff or Brock or legal counsel, anyone else who's here, before we start to throw out amendments that we would have to think about. Councilmember Vogely.
Question, okay, 2 questions. A, or 1, I know that there's an RCW that goes along with the, I'm just gonna air quote, guardrails that a few people that are not within the boundaries have spoken of. So, and maybe that's gonna come up in a minute with an amendment, and it's already, anyways, are we authorized to create a strict consent-only BIA expansion clause?
Sure.
Okay. And then outside billing, I'm not confused, but I'm very curious if I'm getting it proper. Susie has mentioned that outside billing would pretty much be necessary because of the inability to take all of to take all of the calls associated with billing, unless those are too. Please help me understand.
Of course, Susie Haugen, Finance. There's quite a bit more to managing all of the finances of the BIA other than just taking phone calls. Those happen to be quite time-consuming, which is one of the concerns. The it's validating addresses and creating accounts and sending out annual billings and then monthly statements for unpaid accounts and receiving the money and managing our banking and reconciliation. And so there's just a whole list of things. And the phone calls associated with the BI do tend to be pretty time consuming. The DDA does help us on some of the more difficult calls. The staff member that is responsible for doing most of this work is really, it's not the conversations get to a point where it's really not appropriate level of work for this person. So he does try to suggest that perhaps they contact the DEA, and I'm sure that they do on occasion. But all the phone calls will come to us first. The statements are coming from the city of Everett, and people will call our accounting division first. So those, even though we do get help from the DEA, that would not stop that workload. Because we have to, we're like the first responders on those phone calls, and have to decipher what type of a question it is, and even if it is a question that's just from a taxpayer that is unhappy about being a member of the BIA, you have to get to that point where you understand what the problem is, and then work through it to the point where then you can suggest further conversation might happen with the DEA. Or in this case, it would be the ESDA. The issue really is that every division in finance is working at max capacity. And we have one staff member that is responsible for all of the accounts receivable citywide, in addition to other job duties. And so in order to take on an additional BIA, we're going to have to add an additional staff person.
Okay, so I guess maybe my question really was, yeah, it sounds like a lot of work regardless. So like whether it's outside billing as is proposed or not, it's going to be a lot of work and a necessary FTE added.
Yes, if we're to take it on internally, we would be adding another FTE in our accounting division. If it were outsourced by the ESDA to a private accounting firm, it would be that accounting firm to process the billings and what have you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Other questions? Councilmember Ryan.
Thanks. Don't go too far, Susie. I first have a question for Brock. How many new accounts would this be? Like how many, yeah, I guess that's my question.
That's a good question. So in preparing the petition, there's 67 individuals or entities that represent the properties. There's individuals who represent multiple legal entities that represent the properties. And so there's 141 parcels. There are 67 private property owner groups. And I don't have the exact number of legal entities that own property, which would be somewhere between 67 and 141. And so that would be the number of counts, would be those legal entities owning it.
So about,
hopefully,
yeah, so about 67 new accounts that.
I would venture to guess it'd probably be more like 90 to 100 total accounts, because it would be assigned to the owner of the property, not just the individuals that are responsible for the entities that own the properties.
Great. So from what I've been hearing about the administrative staff burden, what are some opportunities for collaboration? What are some of the administrative roles that ESDA would be willing? What are some of the administrative roles that ESDA would be willing to take on to help alleviate the burden that's on the city?
So I'm in close conversations with Liz Stinning about the work that they do and would like to do, and we would like to match that as much as possible or go farther. So that includes on our cover letter being very clear as to what properties are being assessed and what valuation method is being used. And this is a key thing because apparently the invoice itself is a little confusing for folks that the city uses. So we need to make that invoice as clear as possible and make it clear that the first line of contact is ESDA in this case. So if you have any questions about billing, please contact ESDA. We'll explain it. I think if it's possible to remove the phone number off of the city's invoice, we would be happy to do that too, to eliminate those phone calls to going into the city. Obviously, they could still look them up and call off of the website, the finance department. DEA already provides the property information for each parcel around in the BIA, for their BIA. When we start the BIA, we would be providing that full list. And then as updates happen to properties, we would need to update the city on those changes. And so we'd be doing that verification for the city in real time. What else? Yeah, anything that we can do is just, it is more helpful to have the account with the city for the administration of the BIA. I think Patrick highlighted some of the accountability mechanisms that provides. In addition, I think there's a difference when somebody receives an invoice from the city versus ESDA in that process. And finally, it can't go without mentioning that this is an investment in our neighborhoods and our city, and it's a worthwhile one in our view. Now that said, our number one goal here is to pass the BIA. So we look forward to what amendments you might have to address these issues.
And I wanted to follow up on a point that Councilmember Tui had a couple weeks ago about there was a line item in the budget about administrative expenses. So I was hoping you could expand on that a little bit more to kind of fill in what the money is going towards, and then not to put you on the spot, but my point of view is that if the city is willing to take on the administrative burden of administering account, then would there be a way that ESDA could help pitch in to cover the cost of assuming those additional duties?
So the accounting line for the BIA is $30,000. The background budget that goes into it is about $20,000 for management of the BIA. So that's not quite half my time with ESDA, and I'm a half-time employee, so get a picture there. And that remains the remaining $10,000 is for two primary things. One is just accounting purposes, straight accounting of the BIA. And the second is currently, because it's uncertain of how the collection procedure is going to go, funding for the collections procedure. I think the accounting itself could, because it's significant, $313,000 is a significant budget line item, and of the full $10,000 remainder could be used in working with our professional firm, CLA, and helping to manage the accounting side of it. So that's the current background into that information. Regardless, if it is as it is now, the funding for collections will come out of that accounting line. So.
Great, and then to ping pong back to Susie. Thank you. From what we heard from Brock about offering to provide cover letters and phone numbers for them to assume some of those responsibilities, does that sound like something that would mesh with the city's process and with logistics and all the fun stuff you get to do behind the scenes?
I would say that that's very similar to the relationship we already have with the DEA. And, unfortunately, practically speaking, even though we put inserts like with the first annual billing or we even have on the DEA's website, information to call them, we're still the first line of defense on that. And so it's just not going to stop the initial calls from coming to our office, and where we have to field those and serve those customers. And we would certainly seek help from the ESDA for those phone calls that went beyond sort of the technical accounting aspect of it, in the same way we do the DEA.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that's all I have for questions. Definitely have my extended commentary. I do think it does make sense to have the accounting be with the city. I know the Downtown Everett Association, they've been tremendously successful with the ways that they've improved our downtown area and kept it safe and clean and vibrant for people and families to come and enjoy. And their success is predicated on the success of the BIA to collect the dues to pay into it. So I see that model replicated with the Everett Station District Alliance and having it stay with the city of Everett to administer and to follow up on. And I'm okay with the additional staff person as well. I think that the finance team needs another staff person anyways, and there's gonna be something that's gonna tip that scale eventually anyways. So I'm okay with adding another staff person, because I do think that the Everett Station District Alliance's BIA success is predicated on their rate of return for folks being able to pay into the services. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we will entertain, Councilmember Toohey, Vice President Toohey. We will entertain amendments at this time. If those would like to bring forward.
I don't have an
Vice
amendment.
President Toohey. Oh, go ahead.
But do we need to close the public hearing, or did we do that
We closed the
already?
public hearing.
Sorry. Okay. Thanks.
It's late, it's okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody that came and has testified and spoken to us, sent us letters and called us on both sides of this BIA. And it still sits that there's a lot of concern on both sides. So I can't support this unless it has a guarantee on the expansion. I think that's a really key piece. There's, it seems like a lot of property owners that are still not wanting to participate and are nervous that they may be forced to, and we certainly don't want that to happen. And I do have some, thank for David Hall for helping with some amendment on expansion. So I will motion to amend the ordinance to add a new section that states the boundaries of the BIA shall not be expanded without council approval, following the same procedures, including notice of affected property owners as is required for the establishment of the original BIA.
Councilor Ryan seconds.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion before we take the roll? Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Councilmember
Thank you.
Zarlingo.
I'm a relative newcomer to this. I got my first briefing on the ESDA BIA almost exactly a year ago. I've been learning since then, and I would like to also acknowledge the in-person testimony, the virtual testimony, and the letters received on so many different aspects of this proposal. And I would also like to acknowledge the concerns I've heard starting about a year ago about concerns and problems about the previous incarnation of the BIA. It's clear that work will have to be done to establish program credibility, a sense of fairness in the measure, and to prove the measure will be both cost efficient and effective. So accordingly, I'd like to address one aspect of that credibility and confidence and reliability by moving to amend the measure, and I'll note that this amendment's been reviewed by our legal department. So I move to amend Council Bill 2211-60 as follows. Striking Section 8 in its entirety, replacing it with the following, and this, by the way, is to have the city do the accounting and billing. Administration, the ESDA BIA fund shall be maintained by the city. To administer the account, the city finance director is authorized to A, collect special assessments based on data and information provided by the ESDA, B, refund special assessments when overpaid and extend the deadline for payment and or waive delinquency charges whenever the delinquency is the result of a failure by the city to provide a statement of the amount due or non-payment results from extenuating circumstances that are reasonably beyond the ratepayer's control, such as a casualty loss causing bankruptcy. Section C, determine and apply the interest rate for late payments contemplated by Section 12. D, direct the appropriate officers of the city to pursue collection procedures, including bringing legal, civil actions in district or superior court to collect any unpaid assessment and to collect such unpaid assessments by foreclosure action against the property on which it is assessed in accordance with the laws applicable to foreclosure of local improvement district liens and or to collect by civil action such unpaid assessments by judgment against the owner owing the assessment. The city finance director or his designee is hereby authorized to approve, correct, revise, modify, or amend the proposed activities, annual budget, and assessment as proposed by the ESD BIA Ratepayer Advisory Board as described in Section 14. And then finally, amend Section 4 to insert a new Section 4B that reads, the initial assessment invoices will be generated and mailed no later than April 28th, 2023. Subsequent annual assessment invoices will be generated and mailed no later than the last business day of January. And that part of the amendment is specifically to give our city finance department a time to get the staff or resources to accomplish this.
Yes, there's a question of whether we could take those separately. So the first part of the amendment would be to substitute so that the city finance department would be doing all the billing and collecting. And then we will take up the second related amendment on the timing of the implementation. So the first amendment is the first portion, which was read, related to the billing and collecting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I have a friendly amendment to add. But I'll let you go first.
Councilmember Zarlinga, or Councilmember Vogely?
It's at the end of the alphabet. I would like to know how our finance director feels about it, if that's not too much on the spot. Do you want this or do you not?
Thank you for asking. You know, the real criteria for us is to have the resources to actually deliver this. And at this time, we do not. So with the addition of a like staff member to the one that's actually doing our accounts receivable now, we can do it.
To add to that question, are you having as hard of a time hiring someone as every other department in the entire country?
Of course.
Okay. I'm just hoping that if an FTE does happen, that you can hire a person.
Well, we do have a current list in that class specification, so we'll be looking to hire off that list. It's a AFSCME position.
Thank you, that is all.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment if the mover will allow it. That in the very first sentence says the ESDA BIA fund shall be maintained by the city to administer the account. The city finance director or their designee is authorized to, and fill in the rest, which would help open up the conversation for potential collaboration with the Everett Station District Alliance to take on some administrative duties. Will you allow it?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
The second will allow it.
Thank you. So we have a friendly amended amendment. Any questions or comments, Councilmember Vogel?
Just make sure it's she, he, or they.
Any other questions or comments before we take the roll on the amendment? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Abstain.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes.
So
Now we have the second part of that amendment was to change the dates. Will you please read that again, Councilmember Zarlingo?
Amend Section 4 to insert a new Section 4B that reads, the initial assessment invoices will be generated and mailed no later than April 28th, 2023. Subsequent annual assessment invoices will be generated and mailed no later than the last business day of January.
Do I hear a second?
Councilor Ryan seconds.
Any questions or comments on the amendment? Councilmember
Same
Vogely?
question. For Susie Haugen. How does that suit you?
I was consulted on those dates. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I think the idea there and specifically is to allow, well, one of the things would probably be a budget amendment to help the staff, and the other part would be time to get and understand the procedure, get the person to understand the procedures.
Councilmember Vogel?
And the, what about Brock and those, oh, there you are. I was like, "Wah." How does that sound to you, sir?
So as I'm hearing the amendment, there's nothing to preclude it from going out earlier than April 28th. So there's a lot of uncertainty for me in terms of the timing. We're putting together our organizational budget and our board meets tomorrow. So there are some adjustments we'll need to make. We'll adopt an organizational budget and then readjust in the new year based off of conversations with Susie and when the money would be collected and be able to be spent. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wright?
So would it be better to set a no earlier than date? Instead of a no later than?
My opinion, no. I think Susie, I think we have the flexibility, Susie has the flexibility with this date to be able to send out the invoices at a time when the systems are in place. I just add, there's one more step. If this goes through today, there'll be another step, which is we have to enter into a professional services contract between the organization and the city. And a lot of the things like in section 8 might be laid out in that professional services contract. And also some of the questions or the conversations that we need to have will be probably resolved through the development of that PSA with Susie. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Well, and I'll just say, I think from a practical standpoint, we have all been around the city for a while, and we know that, I mean, from a practical standpoint, January 1st was not feasible, honestly. So, so to the extent that we can get it done before April 28th, that'll be, I think, a good outcome for you.
I should clarify maybe something
Yes.
in that statement, which is I think the amendment, when it changed the effective start, the creation date, the establishment date of the BIA, so it would still be a January 1 establishment date, but the collection date would be delayed.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes?
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Anything else before we take a vote on the main motion? Any questions or comments to be made on the main motion before we call the roll? Councilmember Vogely?
I just want to put out there that I appreciate all of the folks that came to talk, and I understand that the right sizing or the different sizing or the just get me out of this BIA sizing should work for you, and so I'm glad that you came to speak.
Councilmember Ryan?
Definitely glad to have the honor of being able to vote for this tonight. I think I've been following ESDA for a very long time, and so it's nice to see this come through, and I look forward to the improvements that are being made in the area. I'm excited especially about the ambassadors that are going to be just helping out and being a presence and understand the focus on public safety, but would offer a caution that efforts aren't duplicative of Everett EPD, but complementary to focus on the public safety of the area through vibrancy and active community engagement and events. So I just want to appreciate your guys' foresight on it and thoughtfulness, and glad to vote yes tonight.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I'll just make a comment. I appreciate everyone who came to speak tonight and who was on Zoom. I've been around here for a while and also have watched the BIA in downtown Everett. I would say that the BIA downtown was similarly not universally loved at the beginning. There is some interesting aspects to this neighborhood, I think, that that make it a little trickier. There's some concern I heard raised about property owners that were admitted as if that were some bad thing, but I would point out that that's okay. The idea of a business improvement area is that it's a self-tax. It's where property owners say, hey, we would like to be part of this and are willing to give our funds to help improve the area that we own our business in. Mr. Bargreen, thank you for your willingness to give your money to that effort. So if other businesses wanted to be out of that area and didn't see a value in it, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not concerned about that. The city simply can't do the level of detailed work. I know people think, well, this could be duplicative of the city's services. The city simply doesn't have the resources to go out and help a business clean up in their area every day or every other day or even every week. But I think the point was made by Mr. Everett that this is somewhat of a transitional neighborhood. There are some businesses where there is pedestrian traffic coming into their business. They care deeply about how that looks to them. And then there are other areas, other businesses in this area which are more industrial in nature. Maybe they have a B2B model and they're not as worried about, daily cleaning of their area. So I think that the needs in this area will probably change as it transitions. And it'll be interesting to see if if there are others that see and would like to join the BIA, as we saw in the downtown BIA, where there were other parts of the downtown community who thought, oh, I think we'd like to be part of that as well because it's working. So it'll just take some time. One question I had, I just wanted to make sure, is as I recall, do nonprofits, are they required to pay the BIA tax, or are they do they get to opt in or out? I know the city can choose whether it wants to or not.
No, there's no, they are a property owner that must.
Red mic.
Yeah, they are a property owner that must pay the assessment. So they're just like any other property
Okay,
owner.
so those 501c3s do
Yep.
have to pay. Okay, that's what I couldn't remember exactly how that worked. So I will, of course, support this. I think that it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and hopefully there'll be a lot of learning that will happen, and eventually, I'm glad to exempt those areas around there that are concerned about getting co-opted in, and I think that if they want at some point in the future to be in, they can certainly request that, but we wouldn't want to force anyone in, because the whole idea is that this is where property owners are kind of choosing to tax themselves, so. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
Sorry, I just was remembering that the Bezos Academy is going to be opening up down there really soon, so that's one more pedestrian, child, all the things, so yay.
Yes. Clerk, will you please take the roll? Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have a motion on the main ordinance. Someone make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Now we have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes, and we continue our action agenda. Item 23, authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with HDR Incorporated to provide engineering services for the design of Reservoir 3 replacement project in the amount of $2,994,000. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 24, authorize the mayor to sign the 2023-2025 collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Everett Police Management Association.
So moved?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Vice President Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 25, authorize the mayor to sign the 2023-2025 collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Everett Police Officers Association.
Councilmember Schwab, make a motion to pass.
And second?
Any questions or comments? Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 26, authorize the mayor to sign the 2023-2025 collective bargaining agreement between the city and Everett firefighters local number 46.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan.
Just a commentary, I'm supportive of these agreements as they're coming through, but just wanted to have a tiny flag that with our city budget increasing our cap at 1%, and I wholeheartedly support paying staff what they're worth, but these are coming in at 10% raises, so the city administration, we have to look at revenue for next year if we if we want to continue supporting our staff. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please take the roll.
Vice President Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We'll now move on to our briefing agenda. Item 27 is Council Bill 2212-67. It's the first and second reading. Adopt an ordinance establishing the basic salary schedule for employees of the city of Everett for 2023, repealing ordinance 3846-21. The third and final reading will be next week on December 21st. Hi, Candy.
Oh, did you hear me? So Candy Bartlett, Human Resources. Good evening, City Council. I am here tonight to brief you on two ordinances. The first one, the salary and appointment ordinance. I'll start with a brief overview of the salary ordinance. This ordinance reflects a point-in-time list of citywide staff positions and salary ranges. Occupation codes, which are used as a tool by HR to manage positions within the city's payroll system, are also identified in the ordinance. Historically, this ordinance is presented to council for approval once annually in December, as we are doing tonight. It reflects all changes from the prior ordinance, including impacts from labor negotiations and compensation committee actions, which are governed by Ordinance 2494.00. The wage increases in the salary ordinance for ATU, EPOA, EPMA, and IAFF, which are if you want me to spell those out, I can for the different unions, but they've all been approved by City Council through the approval of the CBAs, the collective bargaining agreements. Currently, AFSCME is still voting on their contract. I'm hoping to bring that forward for you for approval on next Wednesday. We did include their wage increase, which was 7.5%. in the salary ordinance that you have in front of you. In addition, we also included 7.5% for non-represented employees, and that is in the salary ordinance as well. The only union that is not negotiated at this time, and we're still in negotiations, unfortunately we have not even gotten to the table yet, is our crafts, which I believe there's 5 positions, if I'm correct. I'm guessing that that's right. So don't hold me to that, but I'm thinking that's how many. But we're still, anyway, what I'm trying to get at is those are the only positions. Those would be your inspectors, construction inspectors. Those are the only ones that have 22 wages reflected in the ordinance. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the ordinance or the information contained in it.
Do you have any questions or comments from council members?
I would like to reserve my questions because I didn't even get them all together. Till next week or whenever we see you again, they're not going to be like atrocious, but I'll let you know.
That's great. I look forward to talking with you next Wednesday.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move to council.
Council President, so can I make note that next week is third and final reading in action?
Yeah.
So we're doing first and second readings tonight.
I will read item 28. It's Council Bill 2212-68. This is also the first and second reading. Adopt ordinance relating officers and officials fringe benefits, amending EMC 2.74.020 and adding a new section to Chapter 2.74 EMC. The third and final reading will also be next Wednesday on the 21st.
Great. I'll provide a briefing as well on this one. There's really two changes to this ordinance. The first one being that we have currently at the city, we have two self-insured medical plans. We have the HMO traditional, and then we have the consumer-driven healthcare plan. Our consumer-driven healthcare plan actually had a negative 4%, so a decrease in our premiums for 2023. So we were really trying to incentivize employees to move to that plan. And so what we did is we put in a 0% premium share for our employees for 1 year only. Currently, the premium share in that plan in 2022 is 5%. So it's a 1 year to try to really incentivize employees to move to that plan, which will, what we're hoping for is save money in the future so that we can sustain a good medical plan for all of our employees in the future. So that's the number one change. The second change is actually it's to add a provision for our uniformed non-represented employees. So in police, that would be 3 positions: the chief, the deputy chief, and police inspector. And in fire, that would be the fire chief and assistant chief. And this is to put in a contribution to deferred compensation, a 457 plan, in lieu of Social Security. So all other employees at the city of Everett receive, with the exception of police and fire, receive a 6.2% contribution from the city into Social Security. And we do not do that for these employees. And the other reason for that is when you're looking at the contracts as we just approved with EPOA and EPMA, we really have to look at that differential between a assistant chief and a police captain in the police sector. And on the fire side, it'd be the assistant chief and a fire division chief. And you can really start to see that there is a compression there. But with providing the 6.2%, that does help minimize that. And I just really think that it's important that we're taking good care, and I really appreciate you guys approving the agreements tonight. And I just want to make sure that we're also taking care of our police management and fire management employees as well.
Candy, is there a legal reason that we don't pay into Social Security for them, or is it just a contractual?
No, this was something that we actually opted out as a city, as many cities did. However, there are cities that we found during negotiations this year that still do pay into Social Security, Kirkland being one of them. I don't have the full list. But in addition to that, I can tell you that pretty much every one of our comparables do pay into deferred compensation for those employees.
Are you already administering other 457 plans? Okay, so this won't be an administrative burden.
No, and we're
'cause-
actually doing this. If you look at the police management contract that you signed earlier approved earlier tonight, there is a 5% contribution to them in that contract.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely?
Is this just for police and fire, or I think as I read the title, it was for all directors, essentially I thought it was anyone not in a union.
Yeah, no, that's not correct. There's 2 parts to that, right? The consumer-driven healthcare plan, the 0% for 2023 was for all employees, but the deferred compensation contribution was just for police and fire management employees.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, just a quick note that in my year now in the council, I've been impressed by the extraordinary quality of our directors, and I favor your approach to this, because what can happen in these kinds of situations, at least from my experience in the corporate world, is if you don't pay attention to those positions at that level, you can lose them without warning, and it is hard to get that kind of quality back. So I want to speak in favor of that.
Thank you.
So we will see you next week for those items, and that brings us to the end of our regular meeting agenda. We're going to move on to council comments and liaison reports, and I will start with Vice President Tui.
I have no further comment tonight.
Okay, Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I have a question for Attorney David Hall. I know we've had some discussions about the redistricting and how that went. Could you just kind of give me a quick synopsis on where we're at? And we approved the districts. What would it take to go back and do that process over again? If you can say that in a short.
I can say it in a very short statement. The statute of limitations is 15 days. That's passed.
Okay.
Clarification, that's for.
That's for a challenge in Superior Court.
Okay, so that would be if somebody from the public challenged it in
Correct.
court.
And I don't believe there's any provision in state law for us to go back and revise the approval that we already did.
Okay. Would there be anything that would be prohibiting counsel from administering another hearing or something like that of the commission?
I suppose you could have another hearing, but I don't believe you could use that as a basis to change the approval. I mean, you can have a hearing anytime on anything, right? But there's just no provision for changing the approval that you already implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fosse, did you have any other questions or council comments?
I do not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo?
No, none with me, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely?
I think I still have many questions about districting as well, because it seems that there must be something that can be done, but not tonight. So I guess expect a phone call from me.
Always fine.
Perfect. Councilmember Ryan?
I guess while we're pestering David, if not all council members are present next week and a vote comes up regarding PLAs, what's the vote count that would need to happen to overturn a veto?
5 votes are required to overturn the veto, regardless of how many are present.
Okay, thank you. For council comments, I just want to encourage everybody to check out the Evergreen Arboretum, their wintertide lights. They've been expanding over the year and taking a lot of donations, and it's a joyous, lovely space. So go check it out, especially on these dark, dark days.
Agreed. It is amazing, and I hope it snows. It'll be even more beautiful. I don't have any further comments, and with no further business, we are now adjourned.